Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on a topic that it just never really settles. Merfolk.
Right.
And we're not here to talk about, the best tale designs in movies or if the myths are charming. We're moving completely past the question, are mermaids real?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going straight for the much more uncomfortable what if they were.
Exactly, because for most of history, that whole debate has just been a distraction. It shifts from, evidence and biology into something deeper, into fear and territory and things humanity just refuses to look at. When you strip away all the fantasy, the core idea of an intelligent, non-human species occupying 70% of our planet, that doesn't just challenge biology, it challenges our sense of ownership.
Our whole definition of intelligence.
And our deep, unexamined assumption that we're the most advanced species. We might just be the loudest. So this deep dive is all about the stories people keep quiet.
Yeah.
The little bits of knowledge that suggest there's a history we'd rather just not explore.
Okay, so let's unpack that core argument first, because it's the one you always hear. The standard counterpoint is, on the surface, pretty logical. If they existed, surely we would have found something, some kind of physical evidence. Bones, fossils, cities, tools. The absence of evidence is always treated as evidence of absence.
Right. And what's so fascinating is that this demand for evidence assumes that an underwater intelligence has to follow our path. Our exact developmental path. We're basically looking for an underwater version of Roman ruins.
Yeah.
We expect to find metal or stone tools or traces of fire, but all of those things are, well, they're useless or they're reclaimed by the ocean almost instantly.
Right. We're searching for artifacts of human material progress, when maybe we should be looking for signs of biological progress.
Precisely. And the sources we looked at, they really challenge this assumption. What if memory isn't written down? What if it's oral carried in song or movement or even biological coding? And what if their architecture isn't built, but grown? Living, self-repairing structures that you couldn't even distinguish from the reef around them.
But wait a minute, doesn't arguing for biological technology, doesn't that become a sort of convenient way to just hand wave away the lack of hard evidence?
Yeah.
It sounds a little like a theory that perfectly sidesteps the actual scientific problem of having no physical remains.
That's a fair challenge. It is. But I think the implication here goes a lot deeper than just convenience. If their technology is biological, it means their whole evolutionary path fundamentally bypassed ours.
Okay.
Think about it. Our science is based on extraction, refining, heat, the furnace. Theirs would be based on synthesis, cellular control, pressure, the deep ocean. So if they can evolve organisms that act like fiber optics or create their own self-repairing organic armor, that kind of technology wouldn't show up on our instruments. It's not metal. It's not stone.
It would be invisible to sonar.
It'd be completely indistinguishable from the ocean itself. We're looking for signals they not only chose not to send, but probably evolved not to even need.
So the lack of evidence becomes a potential sign of advancement, not non-existence. They've achieved a kind of perfect stealth just by integrating with their environment.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Why would they stay hidden? You brought up this really uncomfortable theory that discovery has never gone well for anyone humanity finds.
History gives us 0 examples of a first contact that ends in equality for the group that was discovered. 0. If a species has had thousands of years to watch us, to see our wars, our pollution, our need to claim everything, they'd have absolute clarity on the danger of human curiosity.
We dissect, we display.
We claim what we don't understand, and we destroy what we fear. Their absence becomes intentional. It's self-preservation. It's a long-term defense strategy. So they're not hiding because they're afraid of our power. They're hiding because they understand our capacity for just careless disruption. And there's that genuinely chilling concept from the sources about what they might call us.
Yes. The legend, it suggests they have a name for humans that translates to something like the brief ones.
Wow.
And it's not an insult, it's just an observation. We're the ones who burn brightly and violently and then just disappear. The ones who build and destroy and forget the tides. It speaks to a very deep, patient, almost geologic perspective. Silence isn't absence, it's patience. It's just waiting for the brief ones to pass.
Honestly, hearing that it puts all our current anxieties, climate, politics, puts it in a very different light.
Yeah.
We really are just a flash of heat on the surface to them.
And this silence isn't just on their part. The sources talk a lot about the internal human silence, too. Sailors don't talk or they downplay what they saw. Divers don't exaggerate. Fishermen who live off the coast, they learn which stories to keep to themselves.
Because silence is safer.
Silence is safer than a truth that complicates your ability to make a living in a world that insists on its own rules.
That personal censorship, that's
Yeah.
a powerful idea.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the quieter, more unsettling stuff, the kind of anecdotal evidence that suggests observation and boundary enforcement, not hostility. That moment of pure confusion.
Confusion is so much more destabilizing than fear.
Right.
As the sources say, a shark triggers fear, a human face triggers empathy, but something that looks human but behaves in a completely non-human way. That it just triggers confusion. It breaks your reality. Your mind just scrambles to categorize it.
Which brings us to one of the most vivid accounts, the submarine pacer. This was a deep testing operation miles down, and a crew member, not the sonar guy, but someone at a viewport, saw something pacing the vessel.
And that detail is so key. The crew member said this. This thing kept perfect speed alongside them for minutes before just peeling away. The amazing part wasn't the speed, it was the impossibility of it.
Yeah.
It was holding perfect, effortless buoyancy at crushed depth, and it had eyes that were observing, not hunting.
Meanwhile, the sonar operator.
The sonar operator, using tech designed to spot enemy subs, insisted nothing was there. The technology was completely blind to it.
It wasn't attacking, it was cataloging. And that kind of nonviolent boundary check seems to pop up in other places too, right? Like in deep-sea construction.
Absolutely. There's this persistent rumor that divers get rotated out of deep-sea projects, not for exhaustion or the bends, but because they start acting strange. They stop talking. They avoid eye contact. They start refusing to go to certain coordinates or depths.
And the official line is always psychological stress.
Always. But the implication is that they saw something that can't be filed in a report. They learned a private, nonverbal rule, and now they can't do their job anymore.
It's a localized warning that only the experienced even recognize. And you see the same thing in coastal towns. Think about those kids who are warned not to swim past a certain rock formation, not because of currents or the cold, but just because they don't like it.
And no one ever explains who they are. But that rule worked. The source material points out that for generations, no child ever drowned at that spot. It suggests that boundary enforcement is baked right into our own folklore, whether we believe it or not. It's an ingrained respect.
You even see hints of this in bigger operations, like those whispers from offshore drilling crews about machinery failing in deliberate patterns, not random breakdowns, but synchronized failures, rhythmic pressure changes, things the workers described as being warned.
It's the closest thing to a nonverbal conversation we could have with them. It sounds less like malice and more like a gentle, persistent correction. It's like having a really smart neighbor who doesn't use words but just shuts off your power when you play music too loud at 3 in the morning.
It's not hate, it's just them enforcing local zoning rules.
Exactly.
And if we're talking about zoning rules, we have to talk about the sound, the acoustic conflict. If merfolk exist, evolved in silence, our modern noise pollution, especially high-powered naval sonar, it isn't just an annoyance.
It's described in the sources as actively painful, unbearable. And that's a critical point. We've saturated the ocean with sonic signals. If their hearing is biologically superior, that noise could be a constant, deafening declaration of war. It makes coexistence physically impossible.
It forces them to either withdraw deeper or react.
Yes.
Okay, let's shift to the offshoot theory, which is maybe the most unsettling idea because it shrinks that distance between us and them. The idea that they aren't totally alien, but an offshoot of early hominids who just never fully left the water.
Which implies a close and very uncomfortable coexistence. If they are an offshoot, they would carry intelligence, memory, maybe even shared ancestral fears in a way we'd recognize, just adapted for the deep. And this brings a real weight to the anecdotes, especially that Hawaiian transformation story.
Right, this story. Fishermen found a being caught in their nets near a lava rock inlet. Woman-shaped on top, but below. A shifting, powerful tail. But the detail that really stood out for me wasn't the tail, it was what happened next.
Yes. It stayed on land for 3 days, long enough for the shock and then the fear to spread through the whole community. And the transformation back onto legs. It wasn't magical. It was described as slow and painful. The sound was effort, like bones grinding. It suggests that moving between our worlds is a profound inconvenience for them.
And the local stories suggest it wasn't curiosity. It came ashore, according to the sources, out of obligation.
To check the shore, yeah. To judge the damage from the nets, maybe count what had been taken.
An inventory trip.
And then it was called back. On the 3rd night, it was gone, drawn away by low, rhythmic sounds from the water. The uncomfortable belief there is that catching one isn't a trophy. It's a mistake,
A disruption that invites consequences.
a disruption. And the ocean doesn't rush to explain itself. It just
Mhm.
corrects and waits.
Which leads us right into the core conflict in these stories.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between merfolk as guardians and sirens as predators. We have to move past this simple storybook, good versus evil here.
And understand them as two aspects of the same environment. We should use that powerful source anecdote, the one about the friend who was both warned and rescued.
It captures the ambiguity perfectly.
It does.
So she has this childhood encounter, nothing dramatic, with a merman near some tide pools, who gives her a silent warning to stay away from a specific channel. Years later, she falls into deep water and is grabbed by something completely different.
Something cold, sharp.
With a wrong face that made it sound like intense vibration. She said she felt claimed by it. That's the siren.
And this is the critical moment. The sources say she was yanked free instantly by something strong and familiar, the merman she saw as a kid. But the key detail, he didn't look at her. He didn't check if she was okay. He looked past her, watching the water behind her as she was pushed to the surface.
So it was an intervention, but it was absolutely not a rescue in the human sense. And the sources challenge our morality here. Sirens might not be evil. Their survival just might be incompatible with ours. They draw things in. And merfolk might not be protectors of humans. They're just enforcers of their own territory.
The merman didn't save her because she was special. He intervened because something that belonged to his world, the siren, reached too far into hers. He was just protecting the line.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the siren that draws things inward and the merman that pushes things back, they might just be different expressions of the same environment's operating system.
Yes. We assign intent, good versus evil, but their actions are just outcomes. Outcomes based on proximity and necessity and managing a very fragile border. Indifference is so much more likely than hate or love. And as we said, indifference is far more dangerous. It removes any chance of appeal or understanding.
So, what does all this mean for you, the listener? These stories persist because they ask us to see the ocean not as empty space waiting for us to map it, but as occupied territory, with rules we don't write, and the most unsettling possibilities that remaining a myth is intentional. It's protection. Myths are dismissed. Myths are ignored. Myths are safe.
And for the people who actually have these encounters, the most painful part isn't the terror itself. It's learning that to survive, you have to live in a world that insists it never happened. The friend in your story, she learned very quickly how to translate that terror into acceptable words like strong current or undertow, just so the adults would listen.
It teaches you that some experiences just don't survive a daylight conversation.
Exactly. We assume we're the protagonists in these stories, that they happen to us, but maybe we're just variables in a much larger equation. If something reached out from beneath the surface, would you be able to tell the difference between curiosity and hunger? And if someone told you they did, would you believe them?